Hi guys, it's Shay here. And today we're going to be learning about positive and negative numbers, but more specifically, we're going to be dealing with negative numbers, and hopefully by the end of the lesson, you'll be able to complete all 4 operations with negative numbers. So that's being able to add negative numbers, subtract negative numbers, multiply negative numbers, and divide negative numbers. Now, in terms of where we see negative numbers in real life, you can pause the video and think of some examples, but generally negative numbers are used in the banking system. So for instance, you might go to a bank and currently your balance is on 0. So you have £0 in your bank account and you borrow £10. So when you borrow £10, your account actually goes into a deficit. So you will have minus £10 in your bank account because you've borrowed that money. So in essence, you're going into your overdraft per se. And even though you might feel like, oh, I have £10, but ultimately you're going to have to pay that money back. Hence why your actual bank account will go into a deficit. Likewise, if you think about elevators, so you might go beneath the ground floor. So you might go on floor -1 or floor -2. And in really, really cold areas such as Antarctica, the temperature often falls below 0 degrees. So you will have negative temperatures there as well. So these are just some real life examples of where we see negative numbers. Now, very quickly, which is larger? So is -5 larger or -8? And again, you can pause the video and have a go at this. Well, the correct answer is -5 is larger than -8. So -5 is greater than -8. And the reason being is because the further away we go from 0, the smaller the value gets. So notice here, -5 is closer to 0 than -8. Therefore, -5 has to be bigger. And another way of thinking about this is as we move to the right, along our number line, the numbers get bigger. So as I go 1 to the right, as I go 2 to the right, as I go 3 to the right, as I go 4 to the right, and so on, the numbers are continuously getting bigger. So likewise here, as we move to the right, the numbers are getting bigger, or you can think of it as when we move to the left, the numbers are getting smaller. So -8 is smaller than -5, or -5 is bigger than -8. So very, very important we understand this in relation to our number line. Okay, so now let's have a go at some examples here. Now, before we look at doing any calculations with negative numbers, what I always like to do is start with what I call 0 pairs. Now, notice here, this is 1 pair. So we have +1 and -1. So that's 1 0 pair. 1 - 1, well, that gives us 0. 1 - 1, that gives us 0. 1 and -1, that gives us 0. So whilst we have 3 positives and 3 negatives, what we have is 3 lots of 0 pairs. So the value of this is 0, the value of this is 0, and the value of this pair is also 0 as well. So in essence, we're at 0, but it's just handy to have these 0 pairs for the purpose of some examples that we're going to do. Now, let's have a go at this question here. So 3 plus -2. Now, we're going to start with 3. And then what we're going to do is add -2. So we're going to have to add on 2 red blocks here. So I'm starting with 3 and I'm going to add 2 negative ones. Now notice here what happens. So 3 plus -2, what are we going to be left with? Well, 1 and -1, that creates a 0 pair. So they essentially cancel out, that becomes 0. 1 and -1, again, we have another 0 pair. They cancel out, so that's 0. So what we're left with is 1. So 3 plus -2 is equal to 1. And another way of writing this then is 3 minus 2 is equal to 1. So notice here when we have a positive and a negative next to each other, so a positive and a negative next to each other is essentially a negative operation. So 3 plus minus 2 is the same as 3 minus 2, as we saw over here. So I'm just going to demonstrate this one more time. So again, we're starting with 3, and then we're adding 2 red blocks. So we're adding minus 2. What we end up is with 2 pairs of 0 pairs. So what we have is 1 left. So 3 plus minus 2 is the same as 3 minus 2, which is 1. So a rule to remember: a positive next to a negative is the same as a negative. It was the same as subtracting. All right, let's try another example here. So again, I've got my 0 pairs here just in case I need them. So we've got 4 plus minus 5. So once again, I'm starting with 4 positives. So I've got 4, and I need to add 5 negatives. So I'm going to add 5 red blocks. So that's going to give me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 red blocks. So 4 plus minus 5. Now again, I'm going to cancel down my 0 pairs. So that's 1 0 pair. That's another 0 pair, another 0 pair, another 0 pair. So all I'm left with now here is minus 1. So once again, we can see 4 plus minus 5. We can rewrite this as 4 minus 5, which is minus 1. And we can actually draw this on a number line to see how that works. So let's say if I had 0 over here, 1, 2, 3, and 4. My number line is not perfect, but hopefully it will do the job. So we're starting at 4. And if we subtract 5, well, we're going to go to the left. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the left. So we end up at minus 1. But again, key thing to remember: when we have a positive next to a negative, it is simply a negative. So a plus and a minus becomes a minus. All right, let's move on to another example. Now over here again, I've got my 0 pairs, and this will come handy. We've got 3 minus minus 2. So I need 3 yellow blocks. So right now we have 3. And I'm going to minus minus 2. So this is why it's important to have the 0 pairs to begin with. So 3 minus minus 2. So what that means is I need to subtract, or I need to get rid of minus 2. So I'm going to get rid of minus 1 and get rid of another block. So that's minus 2. So what am I left with now then overall? So now I'm left with a 0 pair. So that's, oops, did not mean to do that. So that's 0. But what we have now is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 3 minus minus 2 actually ended up becoming 3 plus 2, because 3 plus 2 is 5. So when we have 2 negatives next to each other, that becomes a positive. So another rule to remember: a negative next to a negative actually becomes a positive. And we can do this example again. So if we go back to the beginning, remember we started with our 0 pairs. Right now we're at 0. But we want our 0 pairs just to be able to do this problem. So whenever you use this block method, always have a certain number of 0 pairs. Now I've got 3 0 pairs. You could have 4 or 5 0 pairs. It doesn't really matter. But we want to start at 3. Now, be careful, just because we have 3 yellow blocks here, it doesn't mean we're at 3, because the minuses cancel these positive ones out. So I'm going to have to draw 3 yellow blocks. So right now, this is 0, because they all cancel out. And then I've got 1, 2, 3 over here. Now I need to minus minus 2. So I need to get rid of, I need to subtract minus 2. So I have to get rid of minus 1 here and another minus 1 here. Now that changes the outcome, because what we have now is only one zero pair. So these two are 0. But since we subtracted these away, we no longer have a 0 pair here. So we actually have 2 plus the 3 that we started with. So in total, we get 5. So 3 minus 2 is the same as 3 plus 2, which gives us 5. So again, going back to the rule, a minus and a minus gives a positive. All right, let's try another example. So 4 minus 3. So once again, I've got my 0 pairs to begin with, but I need 4 yellow blocks because I'm starting at 4. So 4 minus 3. So once again, I have to subtract -3. So I have to get rid of this, subtract 1, subtract 2, and subtract 3. So I've subtracted -3. And now what I'm left with, initially I had the 0 pairs, but I no longer have 0 pairs. I have taken away the -3. So what I end up with is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And hopefully we can see 4 minus -3 becomes 4 plus 3, which is 7. So once again, a minus and a minus next to each other become a positive. All right, let's have a go at the next problem. So now we have -4 plus 3. So again, I've got my 0 pairs here in case I need them. But what I need to do is draw 4 lots of negative blocks because I'm starting at -4. So here we have -1, -2, -3, and -4. And now we're going to add 3 to it. So I'm going to have to add 3 yellow blocks. So 1, 2, 3 yellow blocks added. Now we need to see what we end up with. So remember, this is just in case we need it. So that's currently 0. And then over here, let's count our 0 pairs. So we've got 1 0 pair, 2 0 pairs, 3 0 pairs. So all we're left with is -1. And that's our final answer. So once again, if we have a look at this problem, and if I go back, we can try this out again. So -4 plus 3. So we need to draw 4 red blocks. So that's -4. And then we need to add 3 yellow blocks, add 3 positive blocks. 1, 2, 3. And then we need to cancel down our 0 pairs. So all we're left with is -1. And we can really show this on a number line again. So let's say if I had my number line and 0 is here. And let's say we've got -4, -3, -2, and -1. If I'm starting at -4 and I add 3 to it, I'm going to move 3 to the right. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3 to the right, and we're going to end up at -1. All right, let's try another example. So 4 minus -3. So again, I've already shown you this before. Now going back to the rules that we learned, 4 minus -3, well, 2 negatives next to each other become a positive. So that becomes 4 plus 3, which is 7. And we can simply show that on a number line. 4 plus 3 is going to be 1, 2, 3, giving us 7. So once we take away the blocks, and maybe if you have more complicated problems, it might be difficult to draw the blocks out. But once you get into a place where you understand 2 negatives give us a positive, so 2 negatives next to each other become a positive, then you can do these problems without the blocks and even without a number line as well. So let's have a go at this one. So 3 plus -5. Well, and I'm just going to rewrite this actually. So that's 4 plus 3, which is 7. Now we have a positive and a negative, so that's going to become negative. So it's 3 minus 5. And now we're starting at 3. And if we subtract 5, we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 back. So we end up with -5. 2. All right, let's try another one. So now -3 plus -5. So -3 is where we're starting at. Now plus and a minus next to each other, so that becomes a minus. So this is the same as -3 minus 5. So what do we end up with? We get -3 minus 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have to go 5 back. So we end up with -8. And the last example, -2 minus -6. Now again, going back to what we learned, if we have two negatives next to each other, that becomes a positive. So we're going to have -2 plus 6 this time. So we're starting at -2 and we're adding 6. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to the right. And we end up at +4. So our answer is simply 4. You can write +4, but if you don't put a positive sign, that's absolutely fine. It was you still saying that your value is positive. All right. Okay, let's move on to multiplying and dividing negative numbers. Now, -3 times 4. Now, let's think of this as having 4 lots of -3s. Well, that's 1 lot, -1, -1, -1, giving us -3. Then we have another lot, so that's 2 lots of -3. That's 3 lots of -3. And this is 4 lots of -3. So in total, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We have -12, I should say, because these are negative. So a negative, so as a general rule, a negative multiplied by a positive gives us a negative answer. So the multiplication stays the same. 3 times 4 is 12. But because we're doing a negative number multiplied by a positive number, our answer is going to be negative. We can have a look at another example. So now 5 times -2. Now, whether it's -2 times 5 or 5 times -2, it doesn't matter. What we're saying is we want 5 lots of -2. So this is 1 lots of -2. This is 2 lots, 3 lots, 4 lots, and 5 lots. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we end up with -10 as our answer. So once again, we can see 5 times 2 is 10, but because it's a positive multiplied by a negative, our answer is negative. So this is one of the general rules you need to remember, but hopefully this helps you understand why a positive multiplied by a negative gives you a negative answer. All right, now that we know a negative multiplied by a positive gives us a negative answer. So this is going to be negative, 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 this is going to be negative. Well, -3 times 0, that's just going to be 0. Anything times 0 is 0, whether it's positive or negative. And then we get to this point here where we have -3 times -1. So we're doing a negative number multiplied by a negative number. So what does that give us? What is the result here? Well, let's have a look. -3 times 5 is -15. -3 times 4 is -12. -9, -6, -3, and then 0. Now, can we spot a pattern here? You can pause the video and figure this one out for yourself so you can have a go at working out what the value of these two are. But hopefully you can see that our pattern is add 3 each time. So from -15 to -12, we're adding 3. 1, 2, 3. From -12 to -9, we're adding 3. So we're going 1, 2, 3. From -9 to -6, we're adding 3. And remember, at the beginning of the lesson, we established that the numbers, as we move to the right, of the number line, the numbers are getting bigger. So while 6 in itself is smaller than 9, we have to remember that this is -6 and this is -9. So -6 is bigger than -9. Likewise, -3 is bigger than -6. So we're adding 3 each time. So hopefully we can now see, if we continue this pattern, 0 plus 3 is going to give us an answer of 3, or +3. And likewise, 3 plus 3 is going to give us a positive answer, which is 6. So a negative multiplied by a negative, so as a rule, a negative multiplied by a negative generates a positive answer. So 3 times 1 is 3, but -3 times -1 is still 3, because a negative multiplied by a negative gives a positive answer. Likewise here, -3 times -2 is 6, because 3 times 2 is 6, but a negative multiplied by a negative is still 6. So the rules for multiplication, which also apply for division as well. So rules for multiplication, so rules for multiplying or dividing. If we did a negative times a positive, the answer is always negative. If we did a negative multiplied by a negative, the answer is positive. And hopefully this pattern helped explain why that is. And likewise, if we did a negative divided by a positive, or a positive divided by a negative, it doesn't really matter. So a negative divided by a positive is going to give us a negative answer, but a negative divided by a negative will give us a positive answer. So key rules to remember for multiplication and division. I mean, if you remember this for multiplication, you should just know that you can apply it to division as well. So for instance, if we had, say, -6 divided by +2, or just 2, well, a negative divided by a positive is going to give us a negative answer. So -3 would be the correct answer. But if you had, say, -10 divided by -2, well, a negative divided by a negative gives us a positive answer. So the answer is going to be +5. All right, guys, well, that brings us to the end of the lesson. And really, to summarize, so the rules for addition, and so adding or subtracting, when we have, say, 2 negatives next to each other, that's going to give us a positive. If we have a negative and a positive next to each other, that's going to give us a negative. And I'll give you some examples to show this. So let's say we had -6 minus -2. Well, we've got 2 negatives next to each other. That's going to be -6 plus 2. And we can use our number line to work this out. So if we're starting at -6, and if we add 2, we're going to go 1, 2 to the right. So what we end up with is -4. But if we had, say, a scenario like the following, so if we had, say, 4 or -4 even, plus -3, well, I know a positive and a negative next to each other is going to be negative. So -4 is going to be -3. Well, we can use our number line to work this out. So -4 -3. So now we're going to go 3 to the left. So 1, 2, 3 to the left. And we end up with -7. And that's really it, guys, for today. So I hope you found this useful. The key with negative numbers is to do lots and lots and lots of practice. So if you have an exercise book, or if you go on the internet and look at some practice material on negative numbers, this should all sink in. It seems a little bit scary at first, but with a bit of practice, it will sink in, I will promise you. Have a very good day, guys, and all the best. Bye.